In this video, we will be creating a set of dungeon terrain pieces that you can use in role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or for skirmish wargaming. My name is Justin, and you're watching Justonky. First of all, download the template I designed for these terrain pieces. You can find a link for them in the description below. For this project, you'll need foam core, an X-Acto knife, T-square, glue, paintbrushes, and acrylic paint, and a small sheet of cardboard. Cut out the templates and use Elmer's glue or glue sticks to adhere them to the foam core. The door, however, is for the cardboard. We will get to that. Don't use any kind of glue that is too strong. We will be peeling off the templates afterwards anyway. You do not need to use too much glue, only enough to help you make accurate cuts with the X-Acto knife after the glue has dried. You must absolutely be sure the glue has dried completely before attempting to cut anything. Slippery glue makes a mess and is also kind of dangerous when cutting. Because of the kind of glue I'm using, I need to wait a while for it to dry. Patience is key in this noble endeavor. It has dried. Time to cut out the parts we need. When cutting with an X-Acto knife, always use a T-square or ruler so you can make straight cuts at the correct angles. When cutting, pull the blade towards you. Never ever thrust anything sharp towards yourself, and be careful of where your fingers are positioned. You will need to make multiple firm passes before you can cut through the foam. Don't try to cut through too much of the foam all at once. Don't do it too quickly either. Do it layer by layer, making multiple slow and firm passes. Avoid sawing back and forth. After cutting out the main dungeon tile, I'll be scoring along the lines to create a grid pattern. A single pass will do, and don't cut deep. We don't actually want to cut the foam in half. It's not necessary for me to cut from end to end either. I'm beginning and ending my cuts away from the edges. I'm not even that worried about making completely straight cuts. A bit of roughness and symmetry will help give the dungeon more character. Then we peel off the template. Don't worry about how rough it is, that will help give it texture. It might take some work to get most of the template off. Finish scoring anything that needs to be scored. I'll also cut cracks into several tiles at random. I'll then use the sculpting tool to make spherical indentations all over, creating a stone-like, rough texture. You may experiment and use any number of tools for this job, including bunchum aluminum foil if you have any. When cutting out the table, because of the spherical shape, you'll want to be extra careful. Don't do anything risky and be patient. You'll also want to be careful of the smaller bits, especially thin pieces off the side, making sure you're pushing down the T-square before cutting. Slow and easy does the trick. For the table legs, grab a pair of scissors and just snip off the diagonal bits on both ends. These will give them an oblique angle and make the table so much more interesting. Peel off the templates, glue the legs onto the table, set it aside to dry. For the bookshelf, peel off the templates and glue it together however you wish. I've labeled the different parts, but this isn't precise engineering work, and that's okay. The doors will be tricky. There's an open door and a closed door. For the open door, carefully cut out the parts needed and glue them together. I left a template on it because they'll be glued together anyway and won't be visible. For the door base, simply take an interior block which I had cut out from the door frames and slice it in half perpendicular to the length. And voila! Glue the doors onto the base, and now you have an open door of the entrance, the large hallway, or a mystical portal, whatever you like. For the closed door, the process is a bit trickier. Grab a door template and glue them onto the cardboard. It will be double-sided, so try and align the two sides. Cut off all the foam parts you need for the rest of the door, but don't glue them together yet. For both doors, score cuts over them to make them look like stone pieces that have been placed together or have tile-like textures. Now we go and prime these. You can use spray paint, as I attempted here before I ran out of black primer, or you can use black acrylic paint. I like to prime black because that way any lack of coverage of the color on top will show through as a dark recess or shadow instead. After the frames for the closed door have been primed in black, I finally glue it together with the actual closed door piece. Grab a fairly large brush. A broken or old brush will be best for this. We will be doing some dry brushing. Dab some white paint mixed with some black and get rid of most of it on a paper towel. Then dab and brush any details onto the dungeon to create textures and streaks of pattern. I'll add more white to create a lighter color before doing it again in a small area, focusing on cracks, textures, and any other interesting detail I want to emphasize. You want to try to catch the paint on the edges. You can even use a bit of shade or contrast paint like this shyish purple to tint the dungeon with some very subtle color. For the tables, I try to give the top a more even coverage with wet paint, but I still made it too moist. But the bottom and the legs can get by with whatever. I use a mix of normal base coating and dry brushing for this, but really it's do whatever you want. Let wet paint dry before continuing. Be patient. I kind of like the dark texture in the middle there. I added some green to make it look like moss or some chemicals that spilled on it, or even gunpowder. For the bookshelf, some inconsistently applied vaguely brown acrylic dry brush will do just fine. The streaks and incomplete coverage even makes it look like wood, which is what we want. For the doorways, use the same techniques as for the dungeon tiles, dry brushing grays and whites to create interesting texture and catching paint on the edges of any details on the surface of the foam. As for the closed door, after the glue has dried completely, paint over any areas with dry glue with black paint. Make sure to also go over the edges and sides with black paint in order to cover up the cardboard that shows through. Afterwards, as with the open door, we dry brush mixtures of grays and whites to create textures and details. And we're done! And it's awesome! Remember, you can make rooms of larger and smaller sizes, corridors and junctions and doors, maybe even an entire modular dungeon tile set. The storytelling potential of this set is quite nice. I have skeletons battling Regdar the fighter, who is supported by his elf sorcerer friend from the doorway. Or these skeletons getting ready to ambush Regdar from atop the bookshelf. Or these bad guys trying to swarm our desperate heroes as they fight them off on top of the table. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe. It's really the best way to help this channel grow.